So good evening, everyone. And we continue our story of Bilaam. And as I pick up what we learned last time, at this point in our story, the prophet Bilaam has already examined Israel from the lower level of the Baal plateau, the plateau of the Baal, looking critically at Israel's mode of procreation. And the question was, are they what they claim to be descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? What is their origin? And as we've seen, Hashem answered him that yes, they are, since they keep the purity of the family life. The youngster gets married while they are still virgin, unheard of in the Middle East. Bilaam, then, of course, he voiced loudly the word that Hashem put in his mouth. So, but the king heard only the voice, what Bilaam said. So the Hashem words. But Bilaam in his heart knew that, like the she-donkey on the first revelation, he had been given at the same time some freedom to think the opposite, to think maybe I can find some blemish in them and curse them. So his mouth was speaking the praise of Israel, but in his heart he could deviate right and left, as a she-donkey did on the first revelation. Then we learn that the Bilaam and the king climbed up on the second higher level, the scout field, if you remember. From where Bilaam could examine Israel's faith. Now, are they really indeed so loyal to Hashem as they claim to be? And as before, Hashem put words in Bilaam's mouth and saying, yes, they are. Israel's faith, is pure. Israel's faith is pure and sincere. And they do believe in the Shema. We remember that section actually was placed in Shema one time. And they recite it twice a day, the Shema. And they even thrown God on Rosh Hashanah. You heard the voice of the blowing of the shofar and the trumpet of Rosh Hashanah. So they believe in Hashem and his kingship. Their faith is pure. And here again, Bilaam voiced loudly the word that Hashem told him to say, but in his heart, he still had some freedom to deviate and to think maybe I can find a blemish from them. The freedom it was given was less than on the first lower level, but still he had some leverage to go at least forward and find some blemish in them, or create a blemish in them. Now, Bilaam was ready to climb up on the highest level of the head of Peor and examine Israel camp. From there, he will ask, are they really civilized nation? Are they really civilized nation, or are they wild oxen and a cloud of locusts roaming around, eating everything like King Balak presented them? The question is, can they serve as example of a good society to all mankind, as Jacob has pledged to do? Are these people, wild people who just came out from Egypt like cloud, are they able to present a society that will be example for all the world? That was the question he's supposed to answer. And we learned last time that on the way on the third to the top, something happened to him to Bilam, as he himself saying, and I read it for you, the word of Bilam, the son of Beor, the word of the man with close eye, the word of the one who heard the word of El, who see the vision of Shaddai, while fallen with open eye, while fallen and with open eye. So, as you remember, I talked about a little bit last time, he was saying that when he just encountered another attribute of God that we don't see. It is called Shaddai, which means in Hebrew Shaddai is a breast. There are many explanations. I will select the one that fits the story here, and many rabbis would agree with me that here it means Shaddai is Shad breast. Shad is breast. So Shaddai refers to God's capacity as one who nourishes mankind, like a gardener who cultivates and nourishes mankind, like a plow, like a garden, towards growing towards a goal. So Shaddai is that capacity of attribute of God that raise or cultivate people according to his wish, like a gardener. So far we summarized, we have several attributes that we know from the Torah. There are many attributes that we learn we learn that God is a creator from Genesis chapter 1. God is a judge, Elohim, who created the world for judgment, of course. It's chapter 1. God is merciful. He appears sometimes as a merciful attribute by HVH, who formed along with Elohim the heavenly court. So the mercy join judgment. We learn that. God is also the king of the universe, who leads the history. God is the owner of the heaven and earth, as Abraham perceived it, Adonai. And now we learn that God is also Shaddai, a gardener who cultivates and nourishes mankind to raise righteous people. Not only Messiah, righteous people. Bilam saw Shaddai examining people, semen and eggs, looking for the drop from where righteous person will rise. That's a vision he had. To Bilam's great surprise, such a drop was found embedded in King Balak himself. This guy across of him on the mountain, who stood there, who is arch enemy of Israel. So such a drop, Bilam realized of a potential righteous person lies in King Balak belly. So that revelation stunned him. He burst in laughter, for which we learn he lost his eye. Now let's point out that seeing Shaddai at that point in the story meant that from now on the third revelation, Bilam would see how Shaddai cultivates mankind to produce righteous person. So it's not incidental that the revelation of Shaddai came here to Bilam just before the third level, as he about to see Israel camp, and on that third vision, he will learn how Shaddai works, how cultivates people to mankind to raise a righteous person, righteous people. Now, let's note that the name El Shaddai appear also in God's word to Moses. When God sent to Moses the first time to Pharaoh, he said, let go to Pharaoh and tell him this and this and that. So God is quoting, saying to Moses, I am Hashem, YHVH. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai, but with my name, YHVH, I did not make myself known to them. So here Hashem is telling Moses that he had appeared, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and knew him, he appeared to them as El Shaddai, as a Redeemer, as a YHVH, he didn't show to them because they didn't need a Redeemer, but they need to God to show himself as El Shaddai. Why? Because every time Hashem appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he promised them that they will be fruitful, multiply, and they will become father of many tribes and kings. So El Shaddai is the one who nourishes and cultivates mankind to raise righteous people according to his wish. So it's not incidental that the patriarchs know him as El Shaddai because he promised them to multiply and to produce righteous people, to be example for the whole world. So that's El Shaddai revealing himself to the patriarch, but now to Israel, in Egypt, when they need to be redeemed, he appears to them in a different capacity, in YHVH, which is a redeemer. Now, with that awareness on his mind, the prophet Bilaam stood with the king Balak on the head of the Peor, from where they saw Israel enter a camp for the first time. And like before, Bilaam ordered the king to offer 7 bulls and 7 rams and 7 on 7 altars, invoking the 7th commandment. Moreover, and like before, both of them stood there now in sincere prayer, which made a good impression in the heavenly court. They stood in sincere prayer. And that point is extremely important essential in our story, because it shows that King Balak, despite the fact that he was such an enemy of Israel, he still had the holy spark in him. He could stand in prayer, he could adapt on himself the 7th commandment, and even offer a sacrifice to Hashem, as the prophet told him. So he had a spark, holy spark in his soul, if you want, that could be cultivated by El Shaddai. So that point is extremely important when you talk about King Balak himself, who had in his body a drop from where a righteous person would one day come. So Bilaam also recalled at that time when he stood on the 3rd plateau, that during this forthcoming 3rd revelation, he would have absolutely no freedom to deviate from the word he would say. Like the she-donkey standing before the angel of Hashem on the third time, he have to crouch on the ground with total submission, and he will have no room to deviate from Hashem's word right and left. He couldn't curse Israel, and moreover, as the angel told him, his mouth and his heart will concur. On this 3rd occasion, he will really bless Israel from his own right, from his own heart. He will not try to cheat or to find a blemish in it. That's the angel told him. That's what happened. And that was really easy, if you want, because seeing Israel from the head of plateau of the Peor, if they compare Israel face to the filthy Peor worshipping, Israel from that comparison looked very good, even in the Bilaam scrutinizing eye. He's standing on the Peor and he's looking at Israel. Well, you compare the two, Israel looked extremely good compared to the filthy Peor. You remember how the Peor worshipping was done in a very filthy way. Now, this was the first point. The second point, by standing on this high plateau, Israel camp was perfectly organized, seemed to be to the prophet, perfectly organized with 4 wings, each comprising of 3 tribes with the flags and a tabernacle in the middle. So it was extremely well organized camp. It was not the wild oxen and the cloud of locusts that King Balak described. These are civilized people. They're capable of building a society that can be an example for all the world. So his heart and his mouth concur. You agree with that. So as he himself now saying, and I quote to you, and Bilaam saw that it was good in the eyes of Hashem. So he decided from now on, I'm not going to cheat. I'm going to say and think the same. So Bilaam saw that it was good in the eyes of Hashem to bless Israel. So he did not go as every other time before toward divination, but he set his face towards the wilderness. And Bilaam raised his eyes and saw Israel dwelling according to his tribes, as we just said, and the spirit of Elohim was upon him, poetically. He declaimed his parable and said, so what we're going to hear from him is parable. It should not be taken literally. And he was saying, how goodly are, famous word, how goodly are your tent, O Jacob, your dwelling places, tabernacles, or Mishkan, Israel. So what was he saying here? Bilaam was first impressed, he was impressed not only by the camp perfect order, military order, that's fine, but also by the tent arrangement, the people tents arrangement in the camp. The tent of Israel were set up in such a way, he noticed, that no person could watch and covet his neighbor's tent. Each family lived privately and in modesty. So there was no jealousy. This camp, the way they set up the tent, really fit the idea that the Shekhinah dwell in such camp. Because the Shekhinah hate people who lust the other people, wives and so on. So this is a sign, this modesty is a sign that this camp is really where Shekhinah can dwell. He was very impressed. And then he's saying, how good are your dwelling of Mishkanot, which is the tabernacle in plural. Well, he had only one Mishkan. What does it mean? He was seeing Mishkanot, many tabernacles. So the rabbi said that Bilaam actually was rewarded here with a prophetic power to see tabernacles, even in the Holy Land, not only here, but as later on in the Holy Land, like the tabernacle in Gilgal, in Givon, in Shiloh. His prophecy, therefore, took him fast forward almost 400 years. into the area of Israel judges in Samuel time. That's how the rabbi interpreted his words, tabernacles. And it fits what he was going to say now. And the society he saw there in this future impressed him even more. This was a society in which the Shekhinah dwelled, where the tabernacles stood for praying, where tens of Torah academies were filled with children and people who studied Torah all day long, the synagogue, and such a community fits to be the dwelling of the Shekhinah. And he continued to saying in parables, stretching out like brooks, the garden, like the garden of the river, like aloes planted by Hashem, like cedar by water. Remember, this is parable. Water shall flow from his wells, and his seed shall be like abundant water. Okay, so what was he saying? The rabbi said, what is water if not Torah? So the prophet saw the Torah filling the land of Israel. Is my camera stop?
Your video has frozen, but we can still hear you.
Ah, okay. I see my video is frozen from some reason. Let's see if
But the audio is still coming through.
okay. All right. I don't know if I can change it. No, it's on. I don't know what. Anyhow, if you hear me, that's fine. So what is water if not Torah? So what the prophet saw, a perfect, proper environment for El Shaddai to step in and cultivate and grow righteous people, righteous fruit. You need, for good fruit, you need good land, you need to water it, and to grow, to cultivate it. And mankind is like trees. And here what we were seeing is a society anchored to the patriarch with good faith, the society full of synagogue, the tabernacle, the Torah. And this is a society that the Shekhinah can dwell, and El Shaddai can play out his plan. And let's make another point here. Bilaam saw how the Torah spread out like brooks, like a garden by the river. The Torah is not frozen in time as from given of Sinai, but flows like river to help El Shaddai to fertilize the mankind, the mind of man, and to raise righteous people. Enormous insight. The Torah is a water. I repeat it, Torah is like water that fertilizes people's mind as well as body, if you want, to develop, to help El Shaddai cultivate and develop righteous people. It's not just Messiah. It's people who are as great as the Messiah, because they develop. They have everything according to what El Shaddai wants. And the Torah expands like water flow to answer the generation needs. The source is a written Torah, yet there is also an oral Torah that was either given orally to Israel by Moses or expanded by the sages of Israel in the land of Israel. So the 10th of Academy of Torah, there were sages there that continue to develop the oral Torah. So the oral Torah is comprised comprises of what Moses said, traditionally he heard, and then from generation after generation, the sages added, and the Torah, actually the Deuteronomy in many places says, you should listen to the sages of your time. So the Torah expand to meet the generation needs. So how does the Torah work? How does it help here, our story? As if to answer this question, Bilaam saw the two women now crossing the field between Moab and Judea. The women seemed to be very poor, wearing shabby clothes and walking barefoot. One was about 40 years old, and the other was much older, perhaps twice as much. They clung to each other with love, making their way in the thorny fields toward Judea. The older one said to the younger one, my beloved daughter-in-law, Ruth, go back now to your people, to your mother home. I have nothing to offer you anymore. No money, no other son who could marry you. What can you gain by staying with me? But Ruth said, and I quote, do not urge me to leave you, to turn back and not follow you. For wherever you go, I'll go. Wherever you lodge, I'll lodge. Your people are my people, and your God is my God. Wherever you die, I'll die, and there I will be buried. Thus may Hashem do to me, and more, if anything but death separates me from you. So this was kind words, great act of chesed from Ruth. And yet, since Elvai's chesed, because she was not obligated by any law to cross the border of Israel and support the mother-in-law. There's no such law. She did it voluntarily out of her chesed. The prophet Bilaam was really impressed, even surprised to hear that, because he noticed that Ruth, this girl, Ruth, came from no other but King Balak, who is lacking chesed whatsoever. Moab, rooted in Sodom and Gomorrah, lacked any chesed. That's why they're forbidden to join Israel. If so, wasn't Ruth the product? Wasn't Ruth full of chesed, the product of El Shaddai, who brought her up through several generations, from Balak to her, or if you want to start from Sodom to Balak to her, making her such a graceful person despite their origin. So this is a work of El Shaddai. The rabbis has found here a link in a chain of generation between Balak and Ruth. They found somebody that can show how El Shaddai really works. Because Ruth's father, his name was King Eglon. He was the grandson of Balak. He was a sworn enemy of Israel, like Balak himself, who invaded the land of Judea and subjected the Israelites for 18 years, as told in the book of Judges. One of Israel's judges, his name is Ehud. He was a left-handed person, had his dagger on his right leg, down in the leg, and thus he managed to bypass the Moabite guard and enter the King Eglon palace with a precious gift. King, I have a secret word of Elohim to you, Ehud told the king, so that the king stood up in God's honor, and they were left alone. It was a secret word of Elohim. Ehud then stabbed his a dagger into Eglon's fat belly. So he fell fatally wounded on a chair, while Ehud managed to escape unnoticed. Thus, King Eglon, Rabbi said, died with Elohim name on his lips. The rabbi said that as a reward, he begot Ruth. He was the father of Ruth. A voice came out from heaven saying, Eglon, since you stood up from your throne in my honor, and you die in my name on your lips, therefore you will have sons who will sit on my throne in Israel. Thus, Eglon was a link of good soul between Balak and Ruth, on which El Shaddai could work and cultivate. The prophet Bilaam understood all that, yet seeing Ruth pressing to go with the mother-in-law, he wished to tell her, stop. He wanted to warn her, do not go to Judea. Don't you know that you can never be accepted into their congregation? As Moses says in the Deuteronomy, and I quote to you, an Ammonite, it says, or Moabite, shall not enter the congregation of Hashem. Even the 10th generation shall not enter the congregation of Hashem to eternity. This is a rare prohibition. Because of the fact that they did not greet you with bread and water on the road when you were leaving Egypt, and because he has hired against you Bilaam, the son of Beor, from Aram to curse you. Ruth, however, kept pressing on. Hugging their older woman, Naomi, they reached Judea at the harvest season, between Passover and Shavuot, which is a time of much grace in Israel. Since poor people from all over came to the field, flocked to the field, to collect the many portion of the crop that the owner of the land had to leave out for them by the grace of the Torah. No such laws exist anywhere. Israel's society was indeed the one that Jacob dreamed about, a society where the compassionate law of the Shekhinah were part of the law of the land. So the prophet really saw that, and he was impressed. Bilaam could also see the hand of Hashem working here, Chesed, operating behind the scene, because as it happens accidentally, as if accidentally, Ruth wandered accidentally, if you will, into the field that owned by Boaz, who was no other but a remote kin of Naomi, former husband, who was obliged by the law to marry Ruth according to the Levirate law, if she is accepted into Israel. So accidentally, they wandered to the right place. And Boaz himself, like Naomi and Ruth, was a man full of grace and chesed. And in fact, the word chesed, grace, is repeated numerous times throughout the scroll of Ruth. For example, I give you, when Naomi said to the girls walking with her, "Oh, return each to your mother's house. May Hashem deal with chesed with you." And then Naomi, when she heard that Ruth wandered into the field of Boaz, Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "Bless he to Hashem for not falling his chesed to the living and to the dead." So the word chesed appears so many times in the scroll. And when Boaz on a silo there, and you notice that Ruth was lying by him on the ground. By the way, the law of Levirate demand that the woman would seek the Levirate man. So the fact that she went to the silo was not a sign that she was immodest. On the contrary, she is obligated. This is a rare law that said that the woman, she needs to seek, go after the Levirate and to pull him towards her to fulfill the obligation. Here she is on a silo, lying on his foot, and he woke up and he said to her, "Be blessed to Hashem, my daughter. You have made your latest way of chesed, choosing me, greater than the first one when we joined Naomi, in that you have not gone after the younger men of poor age. You choose me and I'm older." He was like 80 years old and she was only 40. So he said, "Your grace, you came to me rather than to young people. It's an act of chesed." And so on, going on. The scroll is full of chesed. And chesed is stand, of course, for the angel of Hashem, who is now ruling over the story of Ruth, the opposite of what Moab stood for. The prophet Bilaam saw that, as it says in the parables, his king shall be exalted. Let me go back. How could Boaz marry Ruth, a Moabite woman? The scroll of Ruth says that Boaz approached the elders to fulfill his obligation at the gate of the city, meaning the local court, and asked them to let him marry Ruth, a Moabite woman, in order to redeem Naomi, late husband, field. So they told him. He was waiting actually to tell him. He was expecting him to say, "Oh no, you cannot do it because she's a Moabite." Instead, they told him, "You are lucky, because just yesterday," it says at Moshe Shom, yesterday or a day before yesterday, the prophet Samuel passed by our town and taught us without referring to you at all. He didn't know about you, but he just taught us that according to the oral Torah, only a male Moabite is forbidden to join Israel, excluding Moabite women. So yes, you may marry her. And then they blessed him. May Hashem make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and like Leah, both of whom build up the house of Israel. May you prosper in Ephrat and famous in Beit Lechem, and may your house be like the house of Peretz, whom Tamar bore to Judah through the seeds which Hashem will give it to you by this woman. Ruth then married Boaz, and she bore him a son named Oved, who is the father of Ishai, who is the father of David. The prophet Bilaam saw that, and as he was saying, his king shall be exalted over Agag, and his kingdom shall be upraised. The rabbi made an interpretation that the first king he mentions is exalting over Agag, referred to King Saul, who really overcame the Amalekite. And the next one, the king who is upraised, refers to King David, whose kingship is stand forever. Bilaam saw how El Shaddai works, the formula by which he raises and cultivates precious soul like King David. He takes people conducting pure family life and rooted in the patriarch, people who also keep pure faith, who build a society where Shekhinah can dwell. These three ingredients are necessary for El Shaddai, the gardener, to step in and raise a precious soul like David, the king of Israel, the author of Psalms. So that's a formula, how God cultivates righteous people, and not only David, but many other righteous people. The Talmud says that the origin of David remained contested for generations. When David stood up against Goliath, for instance, King Saul asked the people around him, who is this lad? Who is his father? So a man named Doeg stepped forward and said, I know his father, Ishai. He is not one of us. He is a grandson of a Moabite woman who is not allowed to join Israel. Hearing Doeg saying those words, Saul's uncle, Aviner, the son of Ner, drew his sword and pressed it firmly against Doeg's throat, saying to him, if I ever hear that false rumor from your mouth, I will cut your throat. Don't you know that the prophet Samuel has taught us that the oral Torah says that the prohibition refers only in a Moabite male and not to Moabite women? Thus, whoever denied the validity and the power of the oral Torah also denies David's kingship, validity of David's kingship. Remember that. If a Karaite or any Christian or somebody come and say, oh, the oral Torah is just invention of the rabbi. So say, well, so what about David? The written Torah says, no rabbi should enter, join the Jewish people. So if you're right, David is out. So, of course, this is not so. This is the opposite. It shows that the power of the oral Torah. And here comes Samuel. Samuel didn't invent it. He just came and said, he taught, he wandered through the land of Israel with his court. And everywhere he went, he taught oral Torah. And he just came out to the story of a Moabite, and he just made a remark without knowing that the next day it will be pertinent to Boaz. Actually, the rabbi actually pointed out there that had he came after Boaz, it would raise a suspicion that maybe he wanted to please Boaz. Here he came, he spoke to the people of town without any knowledge that Boaz would come a day or two after that and ask for Ruth. And so Samuel just told the truth, the tradition that he had from oral Torah. Now, this point explains why the holiday of Shavuot, we celebrate on the day of Shavuot, we celebrate both the giving of the Torah, both written Torah and oral Torah, as well as the birthday and death of King David. Shavuot is a double celebration. It's the giving of the Torah, oral and written, and David's kingship. The oral Torah and the kingship of David are intertwined. The prophet Bilaam now turned to the king Balak openly and said, I have a solution to your dream, king. Your daughter will join Israel one day, and her son will rule Israel forever. That's what you dream about in your dream that haunted you for so many days. Aren't you happy to hear that? But King Balak wasn't happy at all. As it says, Balak's anger flared against Bilaam, and he clapped his hands. Balak said to Bilaam, to curse my enemies did I summon you, and behold, you have continually blessed them. That's 3 times. Now flee to your place. I said I would honor you, but behold, Hashem has withheld you from being honored. So he says to Bilaam, go. I don't want to hear any of that. So Bilaam turned to Balak and said, did I not speak to your emissaries which you have sent for me, saying, if Balak were to give me his household full of silver and gold, I cannot transgress the word of Hashem to go to do good on the bed on my own. Whatever Hashem speaks, that shall I speak. And now behold, I go to my people, come, I shall advise you what these people will do to your people in the end of the days. He's angered. And he says to the king, he claimed, and I quote, he declaimed his parable and said, the words of Bilaam, the son of Beor, the word of the man who has lost his eye, the word of the one who has heard saying El, and knows this knowledge of Supreme One, who sees the sight of El Shaddai while falling and uncovered. That's the introduction, as I said before, pompous introduction. And he continues, I shall see him, but not now. I shall look at him. Actually, I see him, but not now. I copy it from the book, but I should say, I see him, but not now. I look at him, but it is not near. A star is issued from Jacob, and a scepter bearer has been risen from Israel. And he shall crush the noble of Moab and undermine the children of Shet, for if Cain shall be laid to waste. The star of Jacob that he is seeing refers to the Messiah, the son of David. He would overcome Moab, meaning the one who challenges kingship, and he would overcome the children of Shet. You remember from Genesis, the children of Shet, Enosh, and so on, the whole line worship Bersi only and not Elohim. And he will come the children of Cain, who did the opposite. Worship Elohim, but not mercy. Worship Allah, but not mercy. So he was referring to, you see it in our time. Humanity is still split along this line. And Bilaam see it. It's amazing how he said, he mentioned Shet and he mentioned Cain, as if he's back to the flood time. Now it is said, after saying that, Bilaam was not pleased. He would not go home without his house full of silver and gold. Of course not. So he turned to the king and said to him, King, I have another solution to your dream. Do you want to hear it? So the king's eyes lightened up. Go on, he said. I'd like to hear it. Only if I get my compensation, the prophet said. Oh, you will get more than you expect if I'm satisfied, the king said. So here is my advice to you, king. You can disrupt El Shaddai work by cutting off Israel's route to the patriarch and taint their faith. How should I do that? The king asked, still delighted. Follow your dream, Balak. You dream about your daughter? Let your daughter and her girlfriend dress up with their finest clothes. Let them take a basket of fruit and wine and go to Israel camp. Let them set up their tent among Israel. Instruct the girls to entice Israel males, and draw them into their tent, where they would serve the peor prior to having any sexual relationship. This will be simple in Israel's eyes, since throwing trash and other things, filthy things, in peor face would seem to them not bad at all. But in fact, they serve the peor. This way, you will accomplish both. You will taint the procreation, the mode of procreation, the severed connection to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you have tainted the faith. The Shekhinah would then depart from them, and they will vanish from history. You might even stop Ruth from coming. King Balak agreed wholeheartedly, and to what is called now Bilaam Council for their own, and sent his daughter and other Moabite girls to the camp of Israel, where they caused the death of 24,000 Israel men. Only later, Israel waged war against Midian. It says in chapter 31, and also killed Bilam at the war. And it says, for the counsel he gave to King Balak. So here is a hint for the counsel that Bilam gave. So Bilam was smart. He gave a good counsel to Balak to at least sever, at least delay the coming of Ruth and the Messiah and David. He was not able to stop it altogether, but his counsel is still working today. So what is the Messiah? Here we saw the formula. We learn about El Shaddai, the cultivate people, mankind towards a certain goal. He wants to raise righteous people, and Messiah is only one of them. The Talmud says there are many rabbis, many people, great people who learn Torah, who are great because they actually fulfill what El Shaddai wants. So it's not just a prophecy of one person. It's a way that mankind should proceed on to change. So the Torah is fertilizing our mind, changing our body and mind towards a better future. It's not only for Israel, it's for Gentile. Gentile play a major role here, and Gentile just need to see a good example from Israel and copy that. All right, let's stop here. Do we have a question?